Hello, 6th graders. Welcome to lesson 7.8, Generate Equivalent Expressions. In this lesson, you will learn how to use properties of addition and multiplication to write equivalent algebraic expressions. We are going to quickly review the properties, commutative, associative, and identity, and how it looks for algebraic expressions. So when we are looking at the commutative property for addition, very similarly to any other commutative property of addition, 12 plus a is the same as a plus 12. And same thing applies to multiplication. D times 9 is the same as 9 times d. Associative, if you remember, the values stay in the same place, only the parentheses move. So for addition, we're going to move the parentheses around 5 plus 8 plus b. And in multiplication, same thing, keeping that as 11 times 3 times e, changing the groupings and not the positions of the numbers. And lastly, we have identity. 0 plus c is c, and 1 times f is still f. That's a very fast review for you. And we have one last property, which is going to be a big player in this lesson, the distributive property. For our first example, we have g plus 9 in parentheses, and we are multiplying that by 5. So we are going to distribute the 5 to everything inside the parentheses using multiplication. So we are multiplying 5 times g and adding it to 5 times 9, which is 45. We have just written equivalent expressions using the distributive property. Let's try another one. We're going to distribute the 2 to everything inside the parentheses and by multiplying them. So we have 2 times 10, keeping the sign the same, we don't want to change that, minus 2 times h, again there's a 1 in front of it, so 2 times 1 is 2, and then we have h, and we can even simplify this a little bit more and do 20 minus 2h. Those are equivalent expressions. Next, we're going to continue writing equivalent expressions with the distributive property, but it looks a little bit different. For these two expressions, we're kind of working backwards. So if you notice in the first two examples, we had parentheses and we had the 5 and the 2 distributing into everything inside the parentheses. These is kind of like our answers to them, and we need to divide both of them by a common factor. So when I look at the factors of my coefficients, 12 and 8, I'm going to be thinking about the greatest common factor between those two coefficients. So in this case, the greatest common factor is 4. So I'm going to write 4 on the outside, and dividing 12 by 4, which would be 3a, keeping the sign the same, and dividing 8 by 4, which would make that 2b. So it's almost like if we were to distribute that 4 back into the values in the parentheses, we should get our original expression. Let's try another one. So we have 30x minus 6y. Looking at our coefficients, the greatest common factor here is 6. So I'm going to divide both my coefficients by 6. 30x divided by 6 is 5x minus 6y divided by 6 would be 1. So in this case, it would just be y. And you can do a mental check to see that you get back to your original expression. So here are your practice problems. For numbers 1 and 2, I want you to use properties to combine like terms. And for numbers 3 and 4, using the distributive property to write equivalent expressions. All right, Enjoy the rest of your day.